Hi everyone, Matheny Jick Tano here, the internet's busiest music nerd, and it is time for a review of the new Elder album, Omens. Massachusetts metal and heavy psych outfit Elder, they are back with their 5th full-length LP here, which follows a pretty acclaimed series of albums thus far. The band's Dead Roots Stirring record is easily one of the most celebrated releases of the past decade when it comes to metal fans who love their stuff heavy, slow, a little trippy too. Progressive is another term I would use to describe the band's music, at least some of it. Certainly the more ambitious song structures and expanded instrumental passages on their last full-length LP, Reflections of a Floating World. Previously, Elder wouldn't necessarily be a band I'd refer to as a prog rock band, but this style of music is no longer taking a back seat in Elder's sound, as it's now more broadly informing most portions of the 5 tracks delivered on this new LP. Now, of course, it's not a total replacement for the heavier and more psych-oriented elements of Elder's style, but the band's definitely spending less time spacing out to gnarly riffs and righteous solos, and now seem much more content to be calculating these multi-phased, maze-like song structures. Now, in concept, this is cool. This is fine, especially since the band was already dabbling in this a little bit on Reflections, where they certainly showed that they could take fans on these grand musical excursions and still keep it pretty heavy, pretty visceral. But just to show how much further the band has gone into this sound, on the track In Procession, I can't say I saw the harmonized analog synth and guitar solos coming, nor some of the very obvious Pink Floyd worship in the second half during this groovy instrumental passage. It is a little derivative, but I guess I can't say too many negative things about it, just that I'm not really blown away by the playing or the progressions, as Elder doesn't try to come off too flashy, I guess. I suppose if they did, that might have gotten in the way of them effectively balancing out the proggier sections and sounds with the heavier, more stoner metal influenced bits, which I think they do pretty effectively, especially during the first section of the opening track, Omens, where we get this absolutely thunderous, righteous riff touched up with these watery, fantastical leads and funny little wah-wah synth bits as well. Also some really bassy and grand chord shifts hanging in the background, making the whole thing just sound larger than life. Honestly, some of the portions of this track do remind me of the band Baroness a little bit, but if they had favored like slower tempos and slightly more psychedelic sound palettes. The midpoint of the song is a bit of a lull, but I think that is at least partially made up for by the crushing ending, which features all these synced up riffs and drums just going at it. It's a great start to the LP, and honestly the best song the album has to offer. But the influences that course through this track's veins don't always manifest in the best way on the following cuts. The whole first portion of the track Halcyon is just dead on arrival. It just sounds like some really jangly, bland post-rock, like some early Mogwai or something, but with way less personality. The track isn't really at its best until the Mellotron passages in the second half, where the song suddenly gains at least some sort of grace. The soaring and harmonized solo passages that follow this are a fantastic payoff too, but not enough to make me want to come back and withstand that drab intro. The track Embers was a teaser to this album that I did not like on first listen, and getting more familiar with it in the record itself, I still do not care for it. Mostly because of one key factor, the vocals. God, the singing on this track stinks. They're not just weak generally speaking, they are embarrassing for a band who up until this point, their vocal work has been pretty decent. Sure, the doubled up and bellowing roars on a Dead Roots Stirring aren't exactly groundbreaking or anything, but they did the thing, they got the job done. Meanwhile, all the portions of Embers that see Nicholas DeSalvo reaching into his upper register are very difficult to listen to. Now, having said that, you can't count the vocals against this record too much, I guess, as there are so many portions on this thing that just feature no vocals at all, and even when the vocals are here, they're not mixed all that high either. It's clear the band doesn't necessarily want them to be the most vocal of points in the mix, but if you do choose to home in on them as you're listening to these tracks, you will notice right away they're not all that good. And it's pretty impossible not to focus on them on this track because they are particularly prominent here. Truly, the vocals do do create a situation for me where it is difficult to finish and enjoy this song. And to be frank, the singing isn't that much better on the previous tracks. We then have the closing track on the LP, One Light Retreating. The singing also sits very prominently in the mix here, and it is also not all that good, especially considering how they sit against these relentlessly noodly guitar passages, winding and tangling underneath in such a way where not much is really translating from them. So now even some of the instrumental ideas are kind of falling apart. Thankfully, the second half of this track is a lot more intriguing than the first. There are some passages here that are actually quite beautiful. We get more weepy mellotron, not anything new in the album at this point, but still a nice change of pace in this particular composition. That then expands into some very hypnotic and mellow guitar passages that eventually lead us to a pretty heavy and epic finish. And that's the whole record. I am so torn because there are portions of this LP that I think are quite good. There are moments where I think the more progressive elements meld wonderfully with the stoner and psych sounds. But simultaneously, there are a lot of spots here that I think instrumentally and compositionally could have been a lot more ambitious, could have been a lot more muscular in terms of performance and play. And yeah, while I did discount their importance on the record a little bit earlier, it is tough to ignore just how bad the vocals are. They don't entirely ruin every song on the record, but there are some spots here, especially on the last two tracks, that are made unlistenable because of them. Beyond that, I'm not against the idea of Elder going in this stylistic direction, but I guess remember that the shadow of the bands you are pulling from on this LP looms long and looms dark. And for the most part, I feel like this record does kind of get lost in that darkness. Feeling a decent 2 strong 5 on this one. Transition, have you given this album a listen? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? You're the best, you're the best. What should I review next? Hit the like if you like. Please subscribe and please don't cry. Hit the bell as well. Over here next to my head is another video that you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Elder, forever.